What's going on, miners, and welcome back to the Hobbyist Miner channel. Today, I am joined by two esteemed guests. We do have Clifford, or Yeti, from the Dynext team, as well as Tarik from the Octaspace team. What's going on, gentlemen?
How you doing?
Hey, nice to see you.
Glad to have you guys. So these two gentlemen, we've been chatting back and forth recently, had the pleasure of hanging out with Yeti. It was actually the first time I met you in person, at least, at Mining Disrupt. Had an absolute blast. Huge shout out to the Dynex team for hosting a great dinner amongst friends. But since then, there's been a lot going on with Dynex. You know, I was very heavy into Dynex about a year ago or so, when it was the kind of the shining star of the GPU mining scene. Since then, I haven't really done a lot with Dynex. I've been trying to catch up. But on that note, we have some big things going on between Dynex and Octaspace. And it's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to get you guys in front of my audience to find out, what does this mean for home miners? Because at the end of the day, that is my community. That's my bread and butter. So before we jump too far into it, Tarik, why don't you introduce yourself and your role with the Octaspace team?
Yeah. So I'm obviously Tarik. I'm the Chief Product Officer. Also kind of secondment project manager. So I handle a lot of the product-oriented development, focusing on roadmap, business development, how we progress, and kind of general business side of Octaspace. So, and obviously I'm the main PR guy here as well. So, I'm kind of the face of the business, in a way, if you think about it. But yeah, I'm a very, kind of product. I have a product background, so but as well as IT and project management. So it kind of fits. I fit that role really well, and leverage my experience to kind of narrow or focus Octaspace in developing the products. And one of the aspects as well is working with Cliff and Dynex team as well on some of the initiatives what we'll discuss, in today's chat. But yeah, that's kind of my primary role. And I don't know. That's about it. I mean, keep it simple.
A little bit of everything.
Historic background on my experience, awesome. But yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. And Yeti, over to you. What is your role currently now with Dynex?
Sure. My actual official title is Global Head of Ecosystem and Information Security. So I cover a wide range of different things. I deal with customers, onboarding process, technical, helping where I can with the blockchain side, just in management more than actual development itself. And then obviously I do all the security stuff, which is auditing and the new security systems we run to stop malicious jobs being run on our network.
Awesome. So let's we're going to break down the basics, and we're going to kind of wrap into this relationship which I'm eager to talk about more. So mining is most of my community. They're all miners, GPU, CPU, ASIC miners. And so that being said, let's talk a little bit about what makes your projects unique. So from the Dynex side of things, what really attracted me to your project originally over a year ago was the fact of finding a use for the traditional GPU mining rig, an 8-card GPU mining rig, finding a use for them after the Ethereum merge. Now, there's been lots of crypto projects out there. Great. Nothing that's really stuck, at least in my eyes, for GPU miners. So can you give us a quick little summary rundown for my community as GPU miners as to how Dynex has kind of taken AI, or compute, should we say, and found a home for it with the traditional GPU mining rig? Today's video is sponsored by the team over at asicmarketplace.com. With crypto mining hardware prices dropping, it's critical to find an online store you can trust with your ASIC purchases. The team at asicmarketplace.com has you covered with some of the most competitive pricing on the market. No matter what brand you're looking for, ASIC Marketplace has it. To name just a few: Bitmain, Goldshell, WhatsMiner, IB-Link, iPolo, Jazzminer, and many more. There are no surprises with ASIC Marketplace. The price listed on their website includes shipping. Imagine that. Finally, ASIC Marketplace takes the buying experience to the next level by accepting cryptocurrency as payment directly on their store. Go check out ASIC Marketplace today via the link in this video's description down below, as well as save $110 at checkout with discount code THE hobbyist miner?
Yeah, sure. So we found out very quickly when we first started doing our project that a farm of our own was impractical from a scalability sense. So we switched over to a blockchain. What we've since been able to do is prove that you can run quantum based simulations on traditional hardware while not needing anything like crazy specs, right? So we only require 1x speed. We don't require top of the range cards. We can utilize, GPUs from even 4 or 5 years ago, because at the end of the day, every card still can compute something, right? So we don't want to throw away that possibility. And for us, it was the clearest path for onboarding as easy as possible, right? Because everyone was already doing Ethereum. They're already on risers and mining rigs that are all X1 speeds. Um, you know, it made no sense for us personally to change the requirements of that. And because of how light our blockchain runs, we've still got like 90% of the card to utilize. So it really did lend itself quite nicely to a GPU specific platform. Now, obviously, CPUs can still be used; they're just not as effective as GPUs. But we talked about this while we were at Disrupt, right? Obviously, FPGAs can be run. However, the way that our network runs, you would get more efficiency out of a GPU. So it kind of dissuades FPGAs from running. And then, of course, we're completely ASIC. I would say intolerant is probably a better word. We really don't want ASICs. We don't want ASICs for a very specific reason, right? ASICs are one specific application use. That's not what we do. We run multiple jobs with multiple variations. It wouldn't make sense to even try and build an ASIC at that point, because then it's just a ginormous FPGA. So like your superscaler, for example, right? It would just be like that. So yeah, and I know that Tarik has got a little bit of a different take on ASICs over there at Octaspace, but yeah, I'll let him talk about that side.
No, that's perfect. No, I mean, I'm so pleased to see that Dynex found a home in some capacity for traditional GPU miners. I mean, that's been big for us for that factor, and it's been nice because I think we look at the space of us getting into compute as GPU miners, and there's that huge barrier to entry. You're on different platforms, you're on single card rigs, like you're spending a fortune. So I'm thrilled to see Dynex being able to put those to work. So on the flip side now, on the Octaspace side here, I was first introduced to your project about a year ago when I actually got my Jazzminer X16Q. And it's actually been on there literally since the day I got that hardware. It has been on there ever since. And I just kind of set it, forget it. And wow, it has done very well mining on Octaspace. So for my community who's like, wait, what is Octaspace? Tell my community a little bit more. They're familiar with Ethereum Classic and some of that algorithm, but I think Octaspace is a whole different monster.
Oh, this is so Octaspace. I mean, let's start first. Obviously, you're mining, and we are an L1 blockchain, proof of work, so you can mine. But the reason why we have a blockchain, it underpins our transactions we're a distributed computing project. So we have distributed computing services built all around that. And the actual blockchain underpins all the transactions that go between node providers and people who rent those services. Now, there's also a distinction between, we use the word node, but that often kind of throws a little bit of confusion as well. So a node is actually a computer you can provide in our marketplace to rent. So somebody could rent your hardware. Basically, you're providing your hardware to rent. Now, the beauty of what we've done is that you can also set up something that like your rig to be able to rent it for certain services, but it can mine at the same time. So what actually happens is if somebody rents it, it stops mining, and then during that rental, you're still earning during the rental. As soon as you stops the rental, it continues to mine whatever you've set it up. So you can actually use our node software. You can set it up on Hive OS, for example. So run certain. We've got instructions on our documentation to run that. So that's one of the great things if you want to provide GPUs. On the other hand, as you said, ASICs are playing a much, much bigger role in our network. Well, obviously, when we initially launched, it was very low hash rate, and people mined it with GPUs, and and people got a lot of coins very quickly. But obviously, as it got more and more popular, and as we've grown and grown over time, um, what we've been doing is developing services in the background, right? Um, but we are also encouraging I mean, look, we're a fork of Ethereum. You know that, right? For a lot of you know that it's the Berlin fork of Ethereum. So there's a certain beauty in that. I think it's a better fork anyway. But uh, I'm sure some may disagree. But anyway, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I think, for our purposes, ASICs provide a great amount of security, right? I mean, it's a different use case. It really is a different use case from Dynex, where literally they run specific tasks using their blockchain, and so there's a specific need for GPUs to actually do that. But ASICs in our case just underpin that security, ensure that transactions fly quickly, and very, very low fees. But frankly, fees are infinitesimal on our blockchain. So I think there's a great incentive for providing an ASIC. But obviously, as we continue to develop, as we continue to work with Dynex as well, and I'm sure we can get into some of I don't know how much you're aware of some of the services that we've built. Things like we have our own dedicated rendering platform, right? And obviously, you might be aware of R&DR, for example, have rendering platform, but so do we. But outside of that, we have VPNs, we have AI tools, we have a bunch of various compute tools that you can use, people can rent, and basically the way it works, it's kind of like a peer-to-peer market, right? So as I mentioned earlier, a node, somebody could provide their GPUs or whatever node, consisting of whatever configuration. I mean, it could be even a Raspberry Pi, which can act as a VPN exit node. So literally, we support any range of hardware, whether it's AMD's, Intel, even Intel GPUs. You can set them up as a node. Um, and then people rent it for certain specific services that we built. And what we've been doing is just continuously building those services on top of our currently distributed marketplace. So there's a lot in the pipeline, and obviously, as I said, I did drop the rendering platform mentioned there, but there's a certain
I
time
heard
with
that.
Dynex there as well, because I don't know whether we want to dive straight into it, Cliff, or not.
No,
But
let's jump into it a little bit. I appreciate the introduction. I think it's awesome to hear. It's really interesting. You talk. There's a lot of buzzwords we've heard here between the two of you, like rendering, AI, quantum compute. And the nice thing is too, I think, as you had mentioned on the Octaspace side, is like you guys aren't just like a single task or function project. You guys are
right,
doing a lot of different things. You talked about nodes and different platforms on nodes. You talked about your
yeah.
blockchain there. You talked about mining, which I think is great. I think it's silly to be single task oriented now in 2024. Like you really need to
And
diversify.
I want to stop you there because you hit the nail on the head there. You often see many projects which are kind of very narrow focus on one specific aspect. I mean, look, we're a distributed computing platform. Why would we limit or the ability that what we can do, right? So what we have is different work streams. We have developers in different work streams developing different things, and all that kind of culminates in one marketplace. There's no reason why to limit it. And I think that kind of diversification as well ensures kind of better, more business sustainability because you have more avenues for revenue, effectively, right? Uh, and look, even the relationship with Dynex is an element of that. That is a revenue stream for both of us,
Yep.
but with benefits on both sides. Apologies for interrupting you there, but I just wanted to kind of
No,
make
you're
probably
good.
that
You're
point
I
because
think
it's
I
a
think the
perfect
best
point
way to
many
put it
people
is
miss.
probably we're seeing blockchain mature into a
Right,
much more bigger product than anyone ever thought possible. Right now, it's not
right,
just about transactions; it's about a lot more than that. And
right.
I think that's just an evolution of blockchain now, and we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
and
think
I
it's a good
mean,
point. So on that note there, let's talk a little bit about how you guys have kind of come together here. We have two different projects, different avenues, different focuses between the two projects. So why have you guys come together in a partnership and what value does that bring? Have you ever thought about trying a crypto trading bot, or was too intimidated or wasn't sure where to get started? That was me a few months ago, but then I found Dynex US had an AI trading bot. With just a few easy clicks, you can copy an existing AI trading bot and get started in just a few minutes. I'm currently running several trading bots on Dynex.us. My Solana to Bitcoin one is doing okay, but my Ethereum to Bitcoin AI trading bot is kicking butt. If you're interested, Dynex US has sponsored this video and is offering $30 free to my community to get started with one of their trading bots with no strings attached. Just click the link directly down below to get started. It's entirely free.
So I want to add to that. Because, yeah, it's an interesting one because um, originally, I mean, we started a partnership quite a while ago now. I think when we were still relatively both in our infancy to a certain degree. Um, and but what we originally saw, we saw firstly synergies in respect. Firstly, how we both approached our development, how and our ethics, I would say, and we saw a certain level of partnerships where look, we saw strength in Dynex in relation to quantum computing and AI. I think that was an element I definitely saw an appeal with. And obviously, Dynex looked at as an opportunity where, look, how do we grow this so something that can benefit both mutually, but not a classic partnership that's just marketing focused, and which this isn't. I think that's something often people miss. I mean, you can look at, there's loads of projects where they have a ton of partnerships with various these projects, and all of that is just hype. It's just marketing, right? There isn't. I mean, I've been approached multiple times. I've refused many because I just don't see any synergy. Well, actually, first, just two aspects. One is what's the actual synergy, and the amount of times I've said you don't even have a working product. So what the hell do you expect me to partner with? With what is it? What am I partnering with? Apologies for the crudeness of my explanation, but it really, yeah, and I've seen it so many times. But this is the thing. At the point when Dynex and Octaspace partnered, we both already had an initial product, an initial platform, working services. So you straight from the get go, you know that we're none of us are vaporware for one. And secondly, then we also saw, right, how do we integrate? How do we both earn revenue from our services jointly? Kind of joint partnerships, and a real partnership that's a business partnership, not just, as I said, just marketing gimmick, which, as I said, most crypto projects are. So this was, but there's a lot of attractions. I think Cliff and I chat constantly, probably a bit too much. And we're planning to meet up next month as well. So, but yeah, yeah, I'll be heading over to the UK, so and we'll be meeting up. But anyway, yeah, in general, both as well as our ethos, how we approach development, how we approach the crypto market, how we market ourselves, how we position ourselves, all these aspects kind of lined up that it just made sense. And we've been working, very closely since. And we've got some really, really, kind of great ideas. Some of them are in a pipeline. Some of them we've already started implementing. But there's still a lot of work ahead of us. Now, I mean, if we want to dive into it, some of it, but Dynex for us. So I'll preface this. Octaspace was a very much kind of direct to consumer approach. What we saw, a lot of projects fail. A lot of projects in crypto fail because they get overly ambitious, directly targeting businesses. However, however, Dynex is a different fish. But um, I'm getting there. But for us, in our space, in our kind of focus area, it made more sense where we can get revenue from the average Joe, and that's how we've built our services. Now, with that in mind, we partner with Dynex. Dynex is for us an avenue for enterprise customers. and that's so there's the difference there, and so it expands our horizons definitely from a business perspective. But while also giving the benefits of, well, a sales, an additional unique sales selling point to Dynex, from some of our services. Sorry, that was a bit of a
Fantastic. So
convoluted answer.
no, that's okay. That's okay. No, I appreciate that. So I think Yeti, from your side of the woods there, how is Dynex utilizing Octaspace with this partnership? How does that work?
Sure. So not only are we able to, we all sit in a very group chat and talk, we get very deep in the weeds about different concepts and projects and ideas. And obviously bouncing it off somebody with a different background is always, handy to have, to see if we've missed anything. We're looking very focused on our clients, and it's very easy to miss some of the basics, right? Very easy to do. So having some people to bounce ideas off that are in the same sort of space, but very different, group of people they're interacting with, they might not see it the same way as us. So there's been a couple of times where Tarik's shown me something, and I've given him my opinion, and then there's times where I've had Tarik's and his guys' opinions on some bits, right? But there's a few more bits that we've now started work on. So one of them is that there will be an Octaspace connector built into our SDK, into the Dynex SDK. So when you download and do quantum, like heavy compute, now there'll be a facility to offload that for further services like post processing, for example, and go to Octaspace and render out that job, for example. So I'll give you a prime example of one that me and Tarik were just bouncing around when we first sort of kind of conceptualized this. I showed off a really heavy and dense maze puzzle solver that uses quantum-based algorithms, right? It gets really wacky, like the amount of density you'd struggle to find that pathway within a few hours, let alone like 3 seconds. But what if you could then take all that data, send that to Octaspace, go from 2 dimensions to 3-dimensional rendering, and then create a video of you actually solving the maze, and then it come back to us as a completed file. And I love that kind of idea of being able to go, oh, I can't do the post processing because we don't have that facility. For us, rendering is not really what quantum's there for. But we do have clients that would very much like to potentially utilize rendering services. CFD being another big one as well. Like we could take the heavy lifting on Dynext and then offload the post processing for Octa. And I love that kind of concept, right? It shows real depth to the partnership. And it just, again, as what Tarik said, it's not a partnership of just hype or just naming names for the sake of naming names. It's actually a useful partnership that actually has
Well,
relationship.
I think that's really smart from Dynex's perspective too, because of the fact of, you're focused on your task and what you're good at, we'll say. And instead of, with your customers, as we talked about, enterprise customers coming to the door asking for services, you're now not limited. That's the big one. It's like, oh, we could do this, but you have to go elsewhere to do this. It's now like, oh no, we have connectors built in, so we can do the entire project in its entirety, and you're not limited. So I think that also allows Dynex too in the future to bolt on additional projects as need be, and you end up building a great portfolio, and everybody benefits at the end of the day. Which I think is fantastic. So on that note, I think Dynex just made an announcement of a pretty major partnership. Is that correct?
Yeah, V Technologies. We announced it today. So they're based. They've got subsidiaries everywhere in the world in all kinds of sectors. Not only are they going to open some doors to us, they're going to utilize our services. On top of that, they're also planning a brand new initiative for running a proper course on coding on Dynex. So actual how to code and doing proper training courses for us. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. And that was all a big project of one of our founders, Danny. She spent a lot of months on that project, getting getting them to, go for the big amount of work, right? Not just one set part, but they're going to do a whole set of parts. So they're officially our very first system integrator. And yeah, they're going to really push the boundaries of what we're going to be capable of doing in an enterprise space. So it's good. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic to see, like, crypto, has its place, and it evolves and it lives in this bubble, but it's nice for us to venture outside of that and start to actually put it to real world situations, because I think
Yeah.
your traditional media, your individuals at home, they have a hard time grasping it, except for when you start to connect it to real world situations and companies that they may have heard of and things like that. So I think it's fantastic as these projects like yours on both sides of it with Dynex and Octaspace, they're able to go ahead and make these announcements and these partnerships with some traditional enterprise businesses out there. It adds some legitimacy to these projects, which I think we always strive for in the crypto space, which is great.
Yeah.
So from the Octaspace side, how are you guys utilizing Dynex now on the reverse side of things? Like, how does that partnership value you guys?
Well, as I said, we obviously receive extra enterprise customers from that. So that's a pretty big, pretty big bonus. Um, on the other hand, we also enable running Dynex on from our marketplace on our actual nodes. So you can actually launch Dynex compute from our nodes, and then so you could do a full circle effectively directly from our marketplace. So we've integrated some of that into. I mean, I was just thinking while we're talking about this, somebody could potentially provide a mining rig that's mining Dynex as a node, and that could be rented for rendering as well. That could render, rented for render, and then also while still mining Dynex and doing the tasks on that. That would be great. That's a kind of a great bonus as well. I mean, and that's pretty easy to do. But yeah, I mean, look, I mentioned though our original approach was very much a direct to consumer approach. I mean, we have a lot of adoption at the moment, especially. I mean, our two of the biggest products, VPN and rendering, have the highest adoption. Rendering is getting pretty inundated at the moment, really inundated. We're actually struggling to kind of handle all the renders because we don't have enough GPUs. We actually don't have enough nodes. So if anyone wants to provide a node, please do so. Apparently, the earnings are fantastic. So, uh, but yeah, no. Currently, we are really inundated, and it's growing in demand a lot. We've actually had quite a lot of coverage as well, and there's even YouTubers developing or creating rendering content on our platform. So it's really, really kind of exploded in popularity, which is really great to see. Um, Obviously, we're working some other additional, services. We've got some new AI services that are going to be rolled out. The idea here is, I mean, I don't want to provide a standard kind of chat GPT. There's plenty of those. But what we are doing is we're going to be providing a full kind of AI experience in one service. So you can do things like voice cloning. You can do anything you really want, whether it's generative art and so on, and that's really great. But what I do want to do is, and I've spoken to Cliff as well, is that we want to explore, further down the line as they grow, and I know they're working on some really exciting things of expanding the Dynex framework, of being able to kind of train things like LLMs and so on. We want to get into that as well. What I want to do is see how we can leverage that as a service that we can do directly from Octaspace and offer it as a service to, we've had some academics train AI models on our platform, since that's a facility we offer. But it would be great to be able to offload some of that to Dynex and say, okay, oh, look, this will be done much quicker here. So your renting, your cost of renting on our end is going to be a lot cheaper, but you're going to be paying Dynex directly. So there's kind of an end-to-end element there as well. So we are working on multiple kind of paths and initiatives that we can look at. I mean, look, this is a long-term partnership. We're really, really focused on trying to completely integrate our own platform, still be separate entities. I mean, we're still going to be separate businesses. Look at how we can benefit each other, but still have our own things that we're working on, right? And as I said, not every single enterprise customer is going to be a customer of ours, right? And same as not every our customer is going to be a customer of Dynex. So there's but I think this way we are covering a massive wide array of customers, which is great for both of us in terms of revenue and business development.
Yeah, I think right now as you talked about a few things there, LLMs are huge demand right now. It's kind of the buzzy thing right now is that the next Chat GPT or maybe not even making the next Chat GPT, but it's like the next evolution of that, and also cutting down on that back end cost. I think is where Dynex really comes in, and then same thing on the Octaspace side. Rendering demand is huge. Like I feel like everything under the sun is rendering and transcoding, and the demand is there. I am excited for both of you guys as time goes on to you guys make these partnerships with traditional companies out there that the everyday person uses to handle some of that, whether it's rendering or on the LLM side, which I think is great. So I think with the time we have left here, I'm very curious on what's next for miners with your projects, whether it's Octaspace or whether it's Dynex. I know with you first, Yeti, you and I actually had a conversation at dinner, and I actually asked this question because I'm like, listen, how do we get higher rewards back in the hands of GPU miners? Right at dinner, I said, Yeti, listen, it's going to take a few drinks before you're going to answer me. But I said, how do we get more reward? And we did. I waited for about 3 or 4 drinks in, folks, before I asked. And I said, listen, how do we get more rewards back in the hands of GPU miners with Dynex? And you care to share that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, it's live now. We turned it on a few days ago. So you should start seeing our block rewards actually increase over time now, right? So we know that obviously we've got a fiat on ramp, and how do you take the fiat and on ramp it into our blockchain to be able to pay for the miners that are providing the compute? So we came up with a dispenser that basically will buy up on the open market at set intervals. I won't go into that because I don't want anyone trying to race to the exchanges and try and forefront us with a big buy order, because that would be horrendous. But it periodically will go and purchase on the exchanges and then feed that in over the course of a month, until the next subscription service pull from all of the clientele. So, and then we dispense that over the course of the whole month. So far, we're already increased by about just over 2 Dynex every block. So that's about $6,000 a day, nearly, and it's flattened out our emission curve.
What percent would you say that was an increase of?
I think that's about maybe 1% right now, but that's only the first month of our subscription. So we run a 30-day in arrears type scenario because of refunds, fraudulent checks, and everything like that. So next month it should be a little bit more, and then as we onboard the customers, 1 month delayed, their funds will start going in. But we hope to actually get it back to what we initially started at. So our blockchain started at 450 something Dynex. That's what we're aiming to get back to. Now, it'll take a bit of time to get there, but every time we add more, we're effectively flattening out our emission curve, because eventually it'll get to a point where those lines intersect, and what effectively will happen is that our subscriptions will take over our block rewards. And we've been testing it with great success. It seems very stable. We had all of the dispenser audited. And then just the same as our wrap token that we're doing at the moment, we're in the process of having those audited so that we can bridge off. And obviously, given that Octaspace is, shall we say, an ETH compatible network, I wouldn't say it would be too much of a stretch to potentially see down the road maybe a Dynex to Octa and Octa to Dynex pairing for a bridge. It would make logical sense as part of our partnership down the road. But first off for us is obviously getting it on Ethereum. But yeah, we're trying to bring in as much liquidity into our network as possible now, so that we can start funding those, subscriptions and giving back to the miners.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to hear that you guys are actually going out to the exchange and purchasing the Dynex versus pulling from some type of Dynex marketing, pool that you had or an escrow or something like that, because it also keeps those transactions moving on the Dynex
Correct.
network, which is
Correct. We're effectively
fantastic.
creating our own volume at that point based on,
Yep.
and that's based on subscription models. So it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So on the Octaspace side, as I said, traditionally I was introduced to it with a jazz miner, the project itself, just with my jazz miner, and on the ASIC side. But looking at it, based off our conversation here, it sounds like from a GPU miner perspective, you guys actually have demand today looking for more GPU miners. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we need nodes, we need GPUs for various compute. So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to mine, but they can mine in idle time while they're not being rented. For you can mine something else, but you're still providing compute power, so you're still earning. You actually set your own pricing, by the way. The way it works is, you could provide, let's say, 4090, right? But we just to highlight, we utilize the entire set of hardware. It's not just the GPU. Yeah, so exactly the CPU, the RAM, all of those components are actually very important. I mean, I'll be honest with you. A Celeron with a 1x riser and 8 gig of RAM isn't going to be rented much, even if it has a 4090. Really, some of those aspects really need to still be beefy. I mean, for example, rendering requires still a lot of RAM as well. The actual kind of calculation is VRAM multiplied by 2 multiplied by number of GPUs. That's how much RAM you need. So this is quite beefy, yes. I mean, all of that has to, you can imagine the amount of textures, polygons, all that has to be loaded up and then fed to the GPU. There's a lot of processing that happens. It's not just a GPU. I think people often kind of may not always understand the full entirety of how the process works, but it's not just the GPU that plays the role there. But still, compute. I mean, nodes, as many nodes as possible are welcome. Now, there is currently a limit. We do have a limit of one per static IP at the moment, but that's going to change soon. That will change soon once we release. We're going to be releasing a completely revamped backend and new marketplace as well. Because the original one we built just to kind of enable initial services, and what we've then been since focusing is on the actual individual services. So, for example, the rendering platform looks great. The original marketplace doesn't look so great. It really doesn't, and but I openly admit that, and it's not an issue. We're building a new one, and the new one's going to really.
No, I think the avenue you guys are looking to go about allowing more devices on an IP, I think is fantastic, because when I think of my community, I think of a bunch of GPU miners or a bunch of guys with hardware. That's pretty much what we are.
Yeah.
Having the ability to go, okay, cool, I can turn up a bunch of these rigs on Octaspace now and make them available to rent. You don't hear that as much, and I'm glad we actually had a chance to talk about it here, because I think there's a lot of people in my community that see an opportunity to repurpose their hardware. Dynex gives a great avenue to it on a traditional rig, but yours allows us to take it a little bit farther with individual rig setup. So having the ability to do multiple rigs per IP, that's probably a barrier where people looked at and then walked away from it, because at least amongst my circles, they were like, I want to build 10 of these. How do I do that? So I think that's a great avenue to go and opens that door for that. I mean, and to give some insight to my community, I was just looking before the stream and telling Tarik, Octaspace is up over 420% in a year. So if you were mining it or utilizing it with these rigs that we're talking about here, you have great potential. So when we're looking for profitability, it's kind of finding these diamonds, these unicorns out there. And I think Octaspace is a great example of that.
I mean, and like in terms of earning, now I don't really have loads of numbers because every node is different that provides in
Oh
the
yeah,
marketplace.
yep.
But just today, I saw one of the guys comment. He's been providing one RTX 4090 node, and he's charging
Okay.
83 cents an hour, and he's roughly earned over 22
Wow.
hours around $60. So over
Wow.
22 hours, which isn't bad. I would imagine. I mean, $60. I mean, I don't know electricity
Among
costs.
my circle, $60 in that time period is fantastic. So I don't know who you're
Right.
talking about, but $60
But
is very good. So that's great. I mean, but imagine 10 of those. Imagine I got 10 of
Hey,
those
look,
running at
I
home.
was a miner a long time ago, by the way. I did actually dabble in mining, so I do know a little bit. And I did mine Ethereum. I had a couple of rigs. I mean, I was a
I think it
hobby
goes
miner.
to show though
Hobby
that
miner, no pun intended.
how our projects really align together, right? Because Octaspace's compute is very high end requirements, right? But we're very low end requirements. But what we don't do, they do, and what we, what they don't do, we do. So it really lends itself nicely from all avenues at that point. And I like Tarik's idea of, you could literally put your equipment out to rent. You could have it mining Dynex providing quantum computing while it's mining side of things, and then all of a sudden it gets rented and bam, it's over to Octaspace, and then once it's finished, it's back over to us again. It really lends itself well to a fully integrated solution.
Yeah, I think it's great. I
Mm.
mean, only thing to note though is, I mean, Cliff mentioned for us, mining rewards are reducing over time. I think you're aware of that, right? We have an
Sure.
a reduction, and max supply will be
Yeah.
reached in 2027. So
Yeah.
at that point, there's no more proof of work. Just to be clear, so you only have a finite amount of time to mine space if you have a chance to mine it. Um, at that point we're going to be exploring another algorithm or another avenue too. We may there are potentials for remaining on proof of work, maybe, and being able to work from the certain transaction fees. We're still dabbling in some of those ideas. We've been putting some ideas on paper,
I
so
guess that would
we'll
probably work
see.
similar to how we're doing it, right? Where you'd need some kind of dispenser dropping in
Right,
payments into the block as
right,
block
yeah,
fees. Yeah,
yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm pretty sure that if we need to lend Octaspace a hand, we've got some experience doing that now. Yeah,
We, we will
you don't
talk.
get all the
I
road
mean, we
bumps
always
that
do
we went
anyway, but
through. You
I
don't get
mean,
all the
we're
headaches.
still quite a bit off from that, so I don't think we need to focus on that. I've got
Yeah,
plenty on my plate, trust me. But we've got
Yeah,
plenty
but
on our.
mining and knowing that like there's only a finite amount, and knowing that like it's within the next few years, that's normal. That's normal for
yeah.
miners. We completely
I,
understand that. That's something we look at constantly. DAG file size,
I think
DAG
ours
file size,
is
as
18
as well
months.
as last block. Yep,
Yeah, I think
exactly.
ours is
So that's
18
that's
months
nothing new.
before the emission schedule's out. And then obviously, how do we pay for that? We've got to get those block fees going back in, right? So obviously, I think Octaspace will probably look into that kind of scenario down the road. I'm pretty sure Tarik's already probably starting to plan out how that wants to work down the road. I wouldn't be surprised. Those guys are just like us. It's not next week that we're thinking of. It's not next month we're thinking of. It's almost like 12 months down the line. We've got roadmaps for internally. And I'm pretty sure Tarik's got probably just the same sort of madness internally as we do in that regards. Why
well,
we work so well
as you can
together.
tell, I'm on holiday and still working, so
Yep.
that
Yep.
pretty much tells you everything you need to know. I'm
Yeah, and
constantly
I'm
online,
flying out to the States next month for a holiday, and I
so
guarantee you I'm still working.
exactly. So this is we are workaholics, and that's our nature. But I think listen. This kind of just demonstrates the passion we really have in our
Yes.
projects. This isn't this is a true passion. This is a love. This is something that we really strive to make a success of. I think I don't. I mean, I could try and vocalize it. I think, but it really is something really difficult to articulate. How much we pour our blood and sweat and guts into this, and that's this is why I often say why we are really fit a great fit as well is you can't imagine how much we focus so much on product as opposed to what kind of a lot of the usual projects do is so much just list on exchanges, let's just focus on hype marketing and so on, and we are truly and kind of product focused and service focused and making this a legitimate businesses that will you mentioned the word legitimacy, and that is something I really continue to push, because our biggest markets or advertisers and marketers will be end users or companies. Yeah, and that's actually proven, for our rendering platform, that's actually being proven right. We've had tons of them, and a lot of that has actually come from word of mouth, where artists render something and then they are so blown away they recommend it to another artist and so on, and it's been doing full circles now. And so we're getting articles. There's going to be an article about Octa Render in 3D World magazine, for example. That's coming out soon, and that's not from us. We didn't make it. An artist wrote the article, and yeah, we just found out that it's going to be published, and whoa, I mean, that's great. Blender Nation, I think there's an article going out there as well, and again, that's another artist writing it.
And
None
word
of
of
this
mouth
is
is
coming
the
from
best
us,
form of advertising you'll get,
right?
because it costs
These are
nothing
just
and it has the best
right.
return.
I mean, there's another artist I just saw yesterday. He's going to be giving some courses to teach new, budding artists, and he said he's going to be introducing them to Octaspace as well. Again, we've had zero role to play in that. He's just doing that because they've fallen in love with the platform, and I think that's great. That kind of speaks volumes of what we've built, and I think that's the point, is how we both strive, both Dynex and Octaspace, to operate. We want our customers to be satisfied with the solutions we've built, and then they'll end up recommending it to someone else. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, guys, we're going to wrap things up there. We're over 45 minutes now. These guys will talk all day if I don't cut them off. But I do appreciate Tarik from Octaspace and also Yeti Clifford from Dynext for joining me today. Congratulations on your partnerships, guys. Hopefully my community has learned a little bit more about both of your projects, with things coming down the pipeline with Dynext as well as Octaspace, for us to utilize some of that tinkering hardware at home to put to work. I'll put links to both their projects directly down below if you guys need. And from myself, from Clifford, and from Tarik, we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Sorry to interrupt your video, but check this out. I constantly get emails from the community asking me about trustworthy hosting facilities in the United States that I recommend. Well, I got you covered. Listen up. A few months back, I visited Block Ops Mining's brand new facility in Central Arkansas. The team there was super professional, knowledgeable, and everyday miners like you and I. After visiting the facility, I sent them a few of my ASIC miners for hosting and have been super happy with their service and communication. Go contact Block Ops Mining directly down below in the video description and tell them the Hobbyist Miner sent you for great pricing on miners and hosting.